In a city like Heartland, Ohio, nothing ever seems to happen, until it does. A string of brutal murders, each one more shocking than the last, has thrown the community into chaos. At first, police thought the deaths might be connected to a drug war, a power struggle between rivals. A missing DEA agent, a couple of local enforcers, a mid-level player, and a crime boss all end up dead. But then something strange happens. A woman who isn't connected to the drug war, a civilian, is murdered. As the bodies pile up, the FBI is called in and rumors begin to swirl. Is this a serial killer on the loose, or something else entirely? Hi, I'm Sarah Blake, and you're listening to Justice in the Heartland, a show where we unpack a story of murder, fear, and an inept police force in the small town of Heartland, Ohio, a community torn apart as they struggle to find the lines between right and wrong. This is episode 5, A Kingpin Falls. We hope you'll stick around as we attempt to find out who is committing these heinous crimes, as well as follow the police as they work to make an arrest and put a stop to the violence. I decided after last week's episode and my conversation with Dr. Chang that if there is any reasonable chance Tony Rossi is organizing these murders, it was time to dig a little deeper into his past. If he's not guilty of arranging these assassinations, that might give more credit to the vigilante theory outlined by Dr. Chang. A little bit about Tony. According to sources in the police department, public records, and the few newspaper articles written about him that I dug up, I was able to start to paint a picture of his life. A violent drug lord from Central City, Rossi's hands are stained with the blood of countless victims. His reach is far, and his control, absolute. For weeks now, rumors have swirled that he's behind the killings that have gripped this town. According to Dr. Chang, we're looking in the wrong direction. Others still think he's responsible. Tony's ascent to power was no accident. His path was shaped by a harsh, violent childhood that taught him survival meant being both strong and unyielding. Born into a world of crime, he learned early that control was essential. By his teens, Rossi was already involved in petty crime, but as he grew, so did his ambition. His rise in the drug trade wasn't just about brute force. It was a series of calculated moves. He eliminated rivals, outmaneuvered threats, and grew his empire step by step, becoming feared and untouchable. Rossi didn't rely on violence alone. He understood the art of psychological manipulation, using fear and forced loyalty to cement his power. By the time the authorities took notice, Rossi was no ordinary criminal. He was a kingpin who ruled with chilling precision. Against my producer's wishes, I decided to try and get an interview with Mr. Rossi and ask him point blank if he's involved in these murders. I caught up with Rossi outside one of his downtown apartment buildings, and, to my surprise, he agreed to sit down with me at a nearby bar. Mr. Rossi, I've been following the murders in Heartland. Some people say you've been involved in cleaning up the streets, but your name's also been linked to the violence. Any comment on that?
You're that podcast lady. Yeah, you are. I've been listening since the first episode. Very entertaining. But violence? Nah, sweetheart. I'm just here to make sure business gets done. You wouldn't understand. This place? It's a jungle. You don't survive without a little blood on your hands.
Some people are calling it vigilante justice, and they're wondering if you have a part in it. What's your role in this, Mr. Rossi?
Vigilante justice? What do you think this is, a comic book? Come on, look, sweetheart. You're chasing shadows. Maybe try something real, like me. What do you say? Put down that microphone and have a drink with me.
So you won't deny anything then?
Yeah. Sweetheart, I don't deny anything. You think I'm going to sit here and tell you the secrets of the kingdom? Nah, that's not how it works. But hey, you keep trying. You seem persistent.
Well, I don't give up easy. But I do wonder if you're hiding something. Maybe someone who's even more dangerous than you.
You're cute. You really think you're the first one to try this? All right. You want to talk? Let's go somewhere more private.
That's just a snippet of a conversation I had with Tony Rossi just last week. Although he denied it, there was a hint of fear in his eyes when I asked him about the vigilante. But this week, different news. As sometimes happens, as we record this podcast, news on the case breaks, and we're faced with deciding how to include it. In this case, we're just going to be straightforward. Last night, Tony Rossi was scratched off the suspect list. Turns out, someone had other plans for him. A military-grade IED was planted under his car, and in a flash, he, and one of his men were blown sky high in an explosion so powerful it left nothing but scorched earth and twisted metal behind. It was right in front of the restaurant where we talked just an hour before. Police are saying, other than his crew, I was the last one to see him alive. It's hard to ignore the timing. One moment we're connecting him to these brutal murders, and the next, he's gone, taken out in what looks like a professional hit. I can't help but wonder if the killer was there when we were talking. After news broke about Rossi, our phone line was flooded with people calling in and leaving messages about him. Some blaming me, others praising him, while others seemed happy he was dead.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Look, kid, with Rossi dead, there's a lot that people don't realize about him. Tony Rossi wasn't just some thug peddling drugs on the corner. Nah, he operated like a machine. Precise, ruthless. You don't get to the top like that unless you're as cold as they come. He didn't care who got hurt, so as long as he stayed in control. It was all about power, you understand? Rossi's empire, though? It wasn't as solid as it looked. Outside dealers moving in on his turf, gangs trying to muscle their way in. What was he supposed to do? Send a message loud and clear. Step out of line, boom, you're a corpse in the lake. Take Latasha Green, for example. That woman's murder has Rossi's fingerprints all over it. Quick, brutal, no hesitation. That was his way, making sure nobody even thought about crossing him. But here's the thing. Rossi was smart enough to keep his hands clean. He wasn't the one out there pulling the trigger. Nah, he had enforcers for that, always did. Sure, a couple of his guys got hit recently, but he had more. There were plenty more in the shadows waiting to clean up his mess. That's why I'm not buying it that all this recent bloodshed was Rossi's work. He probably wanted Green out of the way, yeah, but these murders? They were too clean, too calculated. Feels like somebody else entirely. Rossi had a plan, but this is a whole different kind of player.
Look, hear me out. This whole thing about Rossi being involved in these murders, it's all cover-up. You don't think it's a little too convenient, too neat, right? I'm telling you, Rossi didn't kill those people. The real killer, someone with a deep grudge against everyone involved in this mess. Somebody twisted enough to want revenge. On more than just a rival. Have you noticed the pattern in these killings? It's not just about eliminating the competition. It's about sending a message to people who've been, quote-unquote, part of the problem. We're talking about a disgruntled former associate, maybe even one of Rossi's own men. Hell, I wouldn't put it past Rossi's family to be behind this. Maybe his son, he's been more involved lately, running some of the operations while Rossi's starting stepping back. Think about it. Maybe the son wants to get rid of some of that competition, and those two were in his way. Don't forget Green, too. This whole thing, it's bigger than just a drug war. There's something else going on a movement, a cult maybe, working underneath all this. It's not just about the drug game. It's a war between the old school bosses and new blood trying to take control. You mark my words, this ain't a cover. Whoever's doing this, they're not just taking out dealers. They're setting up for something much bigger.
Listen, you got no idea what you done, you bish. Tony Rossi, he wasn't just a monster. Not to everyone. Not to me, alright? I know what they say about him, but they don't know nothing. They didn't see the other side. He had a way about him. Strong, powerful, yeah, but he had more under that tough shell, you know? I watched him for years, and I could see it. The gentleness, he didn't show it just to anyone. The respect he gave to the ones he actually cared about. Maybe I was the only one who saw it, but it was there. Then you come along, stirring up trouble, digging up stuff that should have stayed buried. You just had to make him out to be the bad guy for your little show, huh? And now he's gone. Your so-called truth got him killed. Did you even stop to think for 1 second what might happen? That maybe he didn't deserve to go out like this? It's real easy to sit there and paint him as a monster now that he's gone. But you don't know what it's like to lose someone like that, to have him ripped away just 'cause somebody like you decided they were bad or dangerous. Tony wasn't just some crime boss, he was a person. And I'm sitting here wondering if maybe, just maybe, he'd still be alive if it weren't for you.
I spoke to Chief Thompson about Rossi at the police station. He couldn't say much directly, but the flicker of recognition in his eyes was telling. Though he wouldn't go on record about much, it's clear there's more to Rossi than he's willing to admit.
Look, I can't say much, but Tony Rossi's name is on everyone's lips right now, whether we like it or not. He's been a shadow over this town for years. Did he have something to do with the murders? Maybe, but It seems less likely after the events of this week. Now I guess we just keep doing our jobs.
Yes, but either way, Rossi's guilty. Look at the damage Rossi and people like him leave behind. Innocent kids caught up in it, families destroyed by violence, or just reckless decisions. I think sometimes we forget who's really hurt when justice isn't served. It feels like no one's standing up for them. Are the police? Who's making sure those victims don't just disappear between the cracks? Isn't Rossi directly responsible for most of them? Didn't he deserve to be held accountable for all of that?
You think I don't know what Rossi's done? I can see that you're angry. Believe me, I knew him. You don't just get a guy like him. I've watched him for years. First time I met him, he was just some punk barely out of high school, but already dangerous. He was running with a crew that made grown men tremble. Even back then, he had this way of sizing people up, figuring out who he could play. I was a rookie then, fresh on the force, and he could smell it on me a mile away. Look, we've got plenty of intel on Rossi. We knew who he was, what he did. But you don't take a guy like him down with a warrant and a badge. He was real good at keeping out the light, and we could never get enough on him to make an arrest, let alone a prosecution. So yeah, it's frustrating when you know who's responsible, but can't do anything about it.
So what does this mean for the investigation? Was Rossi just another casualty of the violence we helped breed? Or is this just the beginning of a new chapter in the Heartland's blood-stained story? Detective Ortiz took time from her hectic day to speak to us about Tony Rossi's death.
Rossi's death? It wasn't some random hit or an accident. This wasn't some half-assed bomb made by some rookie. No. This was a military-grade IED improvised explosive device. Very precise. Very deadly. Whoever set it up knew exactly what they were doing. They rigged it with a delayed detonation. That means whoever planted the bomb was damn sure Rossi wouldn't escape. The timer gave him just enough time to get in the car, start it up, then boom. By the time Rossi even realized what was happening, it was too late. The thing is, Rossi wasn't exactly an easy target. He's got layers of protection, guards everywhere. The fact that someone managed to get close enough to plant something like that under his car, it says something. It tells me that whoever did this had a personal vendetta. This wasn't a job for hire. This was someone sending a message. Someone with skills. You ask why he was killed? Well, it's simple, really. Rossi had too many enemies. He made a lot of powerful people angry over the years. Anyone could have wanted him dead. His rivals, his own people, hell, even a family member. But whatever the reason, someone made sure he wouldn't see it coming. And that's what makes this so dangerous. This isn't just about taking down a criminal kingpin. Whoever did this is playing a much bigger game.
Last week, in the face of the Chiefs' curfew, hundreds gathered at the Stringer Park for a candlelit vigil.
Good evening, my friends. I know many of you are feeling this weight of fear in your hearts right now. It's hard to look around this town and not feel like we're living in a world that's slipping away from us. The violence, the loss, it all leaves us questioning. Where is our safety? How do we live good lives when the shadows are getting longer, and we can't even trust the people we've trusted for years? The answer isn't as simple as we'd like it to be. There's a temptation in moments like this. A temptation to reach for something easy, something that feels like justice. We want to fight back. We want to strike fear into the hearts of those who would do us harm. But we must remember this. Fear breeds fear. Violence breeds more violence. It's a cycle. And no matter how righteous our cause may feel in the moment, it cannot lead us to peace if we forget that. I've heard people say, we'll feel safer once they're gone. If we just take them down, the ones responsible for the bloodshed, we'll be all right. But I ask you, at what cost? When we fight with anger, when we resort to the same violence that hurts us, are we really protecting what matters most? Or are we just trading one kind of fear for another? I know you're afraid. We're all afraid. The world feels unpredictable, unsafe. But I believe in the power of our choices. You don't have to fight fire with fire. You don't have to surrender your soul just to survive another day. The greatest courage we can show is in refusing to let fear dictate our actions. The path to safety and peace isn't in the shadows, friends. It's in the light, where morality and justice walk hand in hand. And we must always walk that path, no matter how dark it may seem around us. So yes, stay safe. But do so by holding on to your principles. We may not be able to stop this violence, but we can choose to be something better. We can choose to be the light in this dark place. Let's remember that, together.
Join us next time as the case intensifies.
Sarah, listen carefully. If you know what's good for you, you'll leave this one alone. You think you're helping people? You're just asking for trouble. I'd suggest you stop digging before you find something you can't handle.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to like, follow, and share. Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind these violent crimes and what they reveal about the heart of Heartland. You won't want to miss it.